Oh, now that I'm not on mute. Hello. Hello. If you can hear me, say hello. I must be heard. Who can hear me? Who can do it? Who can say hi first? We have some people on Facebook. We have some people on the tube. I'm waiting. I'm waiting until somebody says they can hear me. That's what I'm doing. I have my agenda like right in front of my face this time. Oh, there goes a light bulb. Oh, hello, hello, hello. I think I'm just going to stick with like live captions over on the Facebook. So if you don't want to listen to my voice, you can just read. Hello, everybody. Got Alex and Dana and Matthew and Kira. My Kira. I'm just going to I got quite an agenda. So I'm going to agenda this up. I'm going to agenda it up. So we're going to be kind of going through, I feel like we've all heard of the term scientific method. And I do think that there is a community in the paranormal that likes to approach their like techniques and their methodology scientific mindedly, at least. And I want to discuss specifically the scientific method because of how difficult it is to apply it to the paranormal. So us finding ways that we can apply it to the paranormal in a way that we can start to gather data that's a little bit more factually backed and a little bit more like checks and balances. We could start to create this picture of phenomena that might lean a little bit more towards science theory than just personal theory. Now, that's a very big ask because that's not something that is going to happen overnight. It is not something that's happening currently. Not in all facets. I do know that there are people out there that are doing a lot of really great research and a lot of really great work. We have the Alex Matsus, we have the Ron Yacovettis, the Lourdes Gonzalez. We have people that are definitely starting to bridge the gap a little bit more than we're seeing in the science and paranormal sort of like imbalance that there is. And I just really find that using the scientific method and laying it out was a really interesting journey in terms of how I set up a recent experiment of mine that is a 2-year-long process. You've probably heard of it if you look at my content at all. And I wanted to start to break down how I went through that whole process, how I set that up, and where it is currently on the scientific method right now that it's at a location, because it's not even close to being done. And then I wanted to break down each step of scientific method and different aspects of the experimental phase, so that if you are somebody who is interested in finding a little bit more of a comprehensive approach to the paranormal, you can use this information and maybe start to organize your exploits and explorations in a way that aligns with methodology that is used currently in science and that has been used in science for thousands of years. Yes, thousands. Thousands. So that's going to look like a lot of things, and we're going to get into it. Then I'm going to try to not make this 5 hours long, even though it's very easy to make this 5 hours long. But hello, welcome to Lauren Haunts the Internet. I'm Lauren, or Lauren Haunts, or Lauren Hellickson, if you like crazy last names. But you can call me Lauren Haunts. And I am a paranormal equipment developer, and I also am a researcher of phenomena and scientific ways that we can approach the techniques that we use in the field. So finding better ways to use the equipment, educating people on how equipment works on a mechanical level. And I don't dive a lot into, on occasion, we get into some of the more spooky. I have my tinfoil hat on standby just in case. But if you know within the last, 2 years of my content, if you know me in person at events and everything like that, you know that I just really love that analytical, objective approach to the paranormal. So that is what this little show is. Woo! Couple announcements. By a couple, I mean like 2. Orders on my website for paranormal equipment are going to be opening exclusively for the, hi Bianca, exclusively for the email list midnight the day after Christmas. So after you have done whatever people do on Christmas, when the clock strikes 12 midnight and it is no longer Christmas, my email list will be able to sign in and snag one of the very limited spots to order equipment if you want to. So again, that is on my website, laurenhaunts.com. If you go to the shop, you will see an email list sign up there. I'm sending out an email probably this week detailing how that's going to work. And at midnight, you will get a special link in order to try to nab a spot. And Teresa, I love you. And it's going to be very limited spots. So I'm not just opening up orders. I'm trying to really sort of reel in how I'm doing orders going forward. My last summer of vendor show orders, I just took orders and it got, if you if you ordered from me, it got so overwhelming, and it got the process, it was not very fun. So I am changing it up. I am condensing. I'm only doing tiny little pockets of orders. When those are done, we'll open it more. So that being said, future lives. Hopefully these just keep getting like cooler and cooler. Hopefully one day I can get my Instagram live to work, because it's still not working, or whatever. Maybe we just don't do Instagram live. That's fine. I really want to get it to work though. So any tips, let me know. I'm using the stream key and I don't know why it's working. So that's unfortunate. The next live. Oh yeah. The next live. When is it? It's in 2 weeks. The next live, that one's going to be fun. We're going to, it's going to be a segment called Diving into the Tech of Techniques. So we are tackling the tech behind the flashlight method. Everybody either likes it or they hate its guts. I like it, but I like all the techniques. I think they're cool, and I think there's a good way to do all of them. So we're going to dive into the tech behind the technique of the flashlight method, which means we're going to have some flashlights. We're going to see how they work. We're going to see the theories behind this technique. We're going to see some sort of like applied, mechanical testing, and it's going to be a good time. It's going to be a good time. What else? That's it. I think that's all. That's all my announcements. So that was only 5 minutes because I started early. Um, we're doing something top secret this weekend. So, oh, nothing's a mess. So that's good. I don't even know why I said that because I'm not going to tell you what it is. There will be kind of like a little like snippet of like a teaser. I think next show you'll see like not you'll kind of see a hint. I'm hoping next show, but that's all. That's all you get for that. Okay, guys, let's get into it. So we're talking about the scientific method. I want to, although I have all my notes here, I don't know if I need to really bring up my notes. It's just really more or less to keep me on track so I don't go crazy. So the scientific method, it's like 7-ish. I was looking at my speaker instead of looking at you. 7-ish steps that modern, but then also like when I say thousands of years, I'm so serious about that is how long science and humans have been using this sort of framework like the scientific method in order to figure out how the world works around us. It uses observation and experimentation and testing to find factual pieces about a question. And you're able to put those sort of facts together, analyzing that data and come up to this conclusion to the questions of the universe. And it has to be very specific. So you have to really, there's even a process in figuring out the question that you're even going to ask. So you can't do the scientific method on like, are ghosts real? There's no way to do the scientific method for that question. So we sort of have to learn why am I getting fuzzy? There I am. So we sort of have to figure out how to drill down into the different facets of these paranormal personal theories that the field has and kind of like compartmentalize little bits and bits and bobs of those things and work towards finding just the tiniest questions and then do the scientific method on that question in order to find other questions to maybe add to that data set and then other questions. And it's almost like it's going to be this never ending thing, but starting to use this framework will help to pick apart a lot of these ideas that we have that are based on mostly fallacy in the paranormal, that are based on, and I'm talking, when I say that we all want to sit here and be like, I approach the paranormal in a science-minded way. 99% of the stuff that we're seeing, 99% of it is absolute just dripping in fallacy. And I mean that respectfully and with so much love. And that's why applying the scientific method to some of these things could be so incredibly amazing, because we can take these tiny questions. And if you just find some factual evidence with a tiny, tiny question, just something that is predictable, repeatable, and testable, that's incredible. And you have heard me say those words so many times. And now I'm going to try to give you the framework to start working towards that. And I'm going to tell you what I'm currently doing with that framework, working towards that, because I'm always going to make sure that I practice what I preach, because how do you know it works if you don't know how it works? I heard somebody say that before. It was me. I said it. So the process is establishing factual data through experimenting and testing, and it's comprised of around 7-ish or so steps to help scientists gain knowledge about how the world works around us. I say 7-ish because sometimes it is give or take. If they're going to be 7, maybe 8 or 9, maybe 5 or 6, probably no less than 7 though, just to be safe. You want to have lots of steps with that. So the scientific method or methodology like this, similar to it, I'm talking like before 13th century, this has been around. And if you are familiar with the scientific method, we will often attribute it to a scientist named Roger Bacon. However, and that's like, I think, 14th or 15th century. But this style of framework, these steps in answering a theory, was maybe not even first, but the latest, or the farthest back that we can sort of see these ideas start to come to fruition. I put down how to pronounce his name. So he is an Arabic mathematician and astronomer who was born in the 900s, not 1900s, the 900, like 926, he was born. Ibn al-Haytham was an Arabic mathematician and astronomer born in like 926. And there has been discoveries of like documentation of something that is very reminiscent of the scientific method when he's working through his experimentation. So this concept is not new. It's ancient, and it essentially is how we've learned what we know about the known universe and the world and everything in it since humans were asking questions. And that's so cool. So all of the things that we marvel at in the world have been have answers because of something like the scientific method. And you can use it to do a lot of your own research. Now, this is so let's see. When applied correctly, the scientific method can help to discover factual details about topics and can further support those theories in science. So that this is sort of the bridge where we can start to make some of the things in the paranormal in that pseudoscience realm and start to maybe just sprinkle a little bit of it into the scientific community because we're able to back it up with the scientific method. And that's so cool. Even if it's like 1% of stuff, that's so cool. So why would we apply this to the paranormal? I don't really understand why I would have to answer that. I know. When would it be appropriate? So applying the scientific method in the paranormal would be appropriate if that is sort of what you are trying to do. If this is not scientific method in the paranormal, it's not a YouTube episode. It's not for entertainment. It is not for jump scares. It is not for finding dead people. It is more or less for those small questions about how the paranormal either presents itself or something like that. So scientific method is not like, my hypothesis is Abraham Lincoln haunts this resident. That you can't do scientific method with that. You cannot do that. So it's mostly going to be appropriate when it is something that you want to, you have found maybe a phenomena or a piece of a technique that you are seeing repetition. And so you're like, that I want to know more about that, why that's happening, and how I can recreate that in different scenarios. And maybe other people can also recreate that in different scenarios. That is a great way to start on the journey with scientific method. It takes a very, very long time. So it's not something for content. It's not something for entertainment. It's not something for an event or anything like that. Oh, here, I'm going to read this comment. I've always compared the paranormal to psychology. It was all woo until they started using science and seeing how it does have some base in science. So, and I will honestly, though, say that I'm going to be generous. 70% of paranormal phenomena isn't science. It's not real. But that means like 30%. And by that, I mean like 2%. There is something. And if that is the scientific method is for that 2% of things. the things that we can prove now, if that's what you want to do. Now, do I think 1,000 years from now, we will understand some phenomena better than we do now? Sure. Sure. But in the now, there are things that we can start to objectively document. And it's not, we're going to get into what it is and what it isn't. We are. When it's needed, it is needed if you are making scientific claims in the paranormal. It is needed if you are trying to make factual claims in the paranormal. It is needed if you want to have something published in an academic journal. It is needed if you want to have the kind of, what is the word I'm trying to look for? I know it's your credibility. And it's not credibility across the board because it doesn't apply to everything. It doesn't apply to everything. But if you're going around and saying, you know, I approach the paranormal as a scientist, I want to see the layout of how you use the scientific method. I want to see the objective, impartial data from your observation stages. I want to see how your question and hypothesis relate to each other and, you know, the analysis of the data from your experimentation. I want to see how comprehensive the experimentation was for your, you know, for that stage of your method. So how can it, you know, and then and that it can help just create more credible data instead of. So the reason why I try to drill this home so deeply is because 99% of paranormal claims, 99% of like phenomena and paranormal activity claims are just completely drenched in. I picked out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I picked out 5 pretty prominent fallacies, and you've heard this term before. You know that I love the word fallacy. So they're just dripping. So 99%. And now, again, this is not something that has to be applied to every single paranormal occurrence. It's not. Sometimes I really just indulge in having a personal experience at a spooky location, and it doesn't always have to be science-backed because it's not appropriate for every question. We're not going to be able to answer every question with the scientific method because you're not going to be able to apply the scientific method to everything. So enjoy the parts where we're not going to be able to really figure it out at all, and you're just going to have to take somebody's word on it. And then maybe find tiny little questions here and there that you can maybe start to apply the scientific method to. Because again, going back to it, about 99% of paranormal claims are dripping in fallacy. So they're dripping in fallacy that's either an appeal to ignorance, which is basically saying that since like, oh, there's not a lot of evidence to the contrary, this must be what it is. Or, oh, because there's not, you know, a lot of evidence out there stating that this exact occurrence isn't real, then that means that it is real. And that's an appeal to ignorance. And ignorance is not, it's not a bad word. Ignorance just means that we don't have the comprehension. And there is a lot of, even in like my discovery and my research, I don't have a huge grasp on, you know, quantum physics like how I would like. You know what I mean? Like it's a difficult subject. We can all throw out buzzwords, but it doesn't mean that the comprehension's there. So if somebody is talking to me, hi Holly, if somebody's talking to me about quantum physics and they are a physicist, my comprehension won't be there. And in that case, my ignorance isn't a bad word unless I use my ignorance to try to trick people. Hasty generalizations. So those are claims that are based on too little evidence. So you have a paranormal occurrence and you have it at a location and there's like little to no, or who cares? There's a ton of supporting data, but and then you make the generalization that you're talking to dead people. Even if everything goes off in the house and a ghost walks up to you and boops you on the nose and an alien spaceship comes down onto the lawn outside and Bigfoot gives you a high five, but there was only like 2 people there. Unfortunately, in terms of like science, that's a hasty generalization to say that, oh, this place is haunted, because you don't have a lot of documentable data. 1 day worth of experience isn't like a data set. And I know that's crazy. There's also an appeal to tradition. That's like accepting paranormal activity as sort of this like factual occurrence because it is the general belief of everybody. How we use dowsing rods, how we use a pendulum, how we use proximity sensors, or how we gather or we think data from. Don't come at me because this is not. I'm not saying that anybody doesn't have gifts, because I know full well that there are people that have different gifts from other people. But it's like stating that a medium telling you answers in a space is a part of your like factual data because they said it. And then there's also bandwagon fallacy, this idea that we learn a lot from entertainment, whether or not you want to believe it or not, that's up to you. We learn a lot from entertainment, and we learn a lot of our techniques from entertainment. And so that bandwagon jump of using a technique, and then when you get similar responses to a technique that you use, you automatically make assumptions. And that has happened 100% of the time that I have gone and investigated with groups. 100% of the time that I have gone out with different groups and investigated. 100% of locations, 100% of groups that I've ever gone out with, the bandwagon fallacy has always occurred once. Can I say always 9 more times? Always. And the reason why I'm hitting that home is because I want us to understand that like we all do it. So what a great time to learn some like new tips and tricks along the way to break some of these habits 100% of the time. And then the appeal to authority. I mean, I think everybody's heard me say this a bajillion times. Believing data based on the credential of the person presenting them. Trust doesn't mean truth. And that includes me too. If I present you with a paranormal occurrence, or I have a piece of evidence and I want to show you, I don't want you to be like, oh, this is probably legit. Lauren showed it to me. I don't want you to do that. I don't want that kind of trust. I don't. I'm like, man, I think like dragons and like fairies and, you know, a big, huge spider spun the universe. Like, don't, if I just come to you and say, look at this, it's a ghost, do not be like, oh my God, well, Lauren's showing me. Of course, she wouldn't, you know, she knows. Now, if I show you like a dragon, just believe me, because it's a real dragon. What else? I'm getting off track here. So, and that kind of takes me into like all of these fallacies are super based around like who's presenting you the evidence. And we want to really be impartial observers when we're collecting data like this. And this is why I'm saying this isn't for just the casual explorer, because there are times that I do just like to go through creepy places and see what I feel. I do. I love that. Sometimes I prefer that. Science can be boring, okay? Sometimes I just want to be spooked and just go into a place and see if something says my name, or let Jeff Fent talk into mirrors and see if we can catch weird faces, okay? Sometimes I just want to do that. Sometimes I don't always have to be science-minded, Lauren, and that is okay. But when it is time to be science-minded Lauren, I want to be an impartial, unbiased observer, which is why, if a lot of you have investigated with me recently, which is why I don't introduce myself, I don't say my name, I don't ask questions, I don't engage with the space verbally. I allow people around me to do that while I just become a very impartial, non-biased observer and like data collector. Because I find that if I'm going to be presenting information, I don't want to be a part of the data that I am presenting, if that makes sense. I don't want it to be, I asked this and this is what I came. I don't want that. I want to be an impartial observer. And I think that's really, really important when you want to approach a paranormal experiment with a science mind. I don't want to be a part of the variables. I just want to observe everything. And the scientific method is a well-rounded process that's been in use for thousands of years when establishing, that factual data. Okay, now I'm done going crazy. Probably people don't have questions yet, so I'm not going to worry about questions. You guys may have some questions in a little bit. I'm just going to let everybody know that I am reading your comments and I love you so much. I love you so much. Oh gosh, there's more comments. Oh my goodness, I'm sorry. Let's go through the scientific method. Hey, I'm down here. I want to take each one and I'll go through them and I will talk about each, and then I want to sort of bring them together, and I want to show you an example of how I have recently applied the scientific method to an experiment that is currently running right now. So, I press enter. Here we go. So the first step, of the scientific method is your question. Now, Lauren, you just said we can't ask these broad questions. Yes, I know. And it's so frustrating and it's so infuriating. So that question has to be specific and it has to be observable. And that can be really, really, really difficult because it's like, we want to just know, are ghosts real? We want to know, what is a ghost? We want to know how do ghosts communicate? We want to know all these things, but none of those things are specific and they're not observable. They might feel observable, but in terms of formulating a proper question, they're just not observable. So, and we'll talk about some ways that you can sort of formulate questions and kind of drill down to what you need to be talking about. So then the second piece is going to be observation. So you come up with a question. And now here's where, when I say 7-ish, or sometimes it's not in this order, because sometimes it's not going to be in this order. And this is a great example of it. So the question and then observation is next. So you formulate a question and then you need to observe the environment in which your question is being asked. However, in my opinion, when it comes to the paranormal or the parascientific method, I think that observation piece could be first, because the paranormal is very, very, it's very, it's so based on observation, So it might be I think I want to find some sort of question maybe about my favorite technique. So then your observation would be, because you haven't figured out the question yet. So go into paranormal locations and start doing that technique over and over and over and over and over, and have your friend do the technique at a different location over, and take notes and see if any questions pop up. And then, you found your question, and that's great. And that's fantastic. So these two things can go back and forth with each other. And then you form your hypothesis. We all have heard this term before, probably in middle school or the science club or something like that. The hypothesis that is forming an answer or an assumption to your question. So this will make a lot more sense when I put it together with the example that I am going to be talking about. And we'll go back through here again, and I'll talk about exactly what the part of the experiment that I am doing aligns with these different pieces of this method. So, like, let's say your question is, what would be a good one? Your question would be, does the water pressure change in different temperature environments through a like gravity um, tube or something? So I would have like water, I would have a tube coming out of the water and like siphoning it and then going down. And in like, does a cool environment um, give me more like water pressure than a hot environment? Or maybe even like, here's a better one. Because this is one that we kind of know the answer to. Does adding salt to water make it freeze faster? That's it. That's a good one. There, let's not make it weird, Lauren. I get so ahead of myself sometimes. And I'm like, let's really find out an answer to a question that's ridiculous. Okay. So like, does salt make water freeze faster? So my observation would be finding like room temperature or like cold or things like that. And like, where do I want to pose this question? And then I find that I'm going to be working with like room temperature water, and I'm going to work with like rock salt. So then my hypothesis would be rock salt in room temperature water freezes faster than hot salt or hot water with rock salt. Yeah, so that would be my hypothesis. And then I can do an experiment. But I formed the hypothesis as the answer. So if we did the paranormal, I'm just going to use my example is the resonance chamber, obviously. My hypothesis is your meditative state helps you to experience, to have seemingly, or supposedly, because I can't answer that question, whether or not those experiences are in fact paranormal. So a meditative state allows you to experience what you may perceive as supernatural or paranormal phenomena in a location, more so than just going in, dry. And that's kind of my hypothesis when it comes to the chamber. And I was able to find that by observation. And then I had a question: does meditative state affect humans' ability to feel like they're having a supernatural experience? And then I formulated my hypothesis from there. So then next would be the prediction. So with like the rock salt, my prediction to my hypothesis and my question would be room temperature water freezes. Oh, sorry. My prediction would be, because we're doing the resonance chamber, if a person meditates for at least 15 to 17 minutes, they are more likely to have a seemingly or an assumed paranormal experience than beforehand when they don't meditate. So I'm very specific with like 15 minutes. So my prediction has to encompass the framework that answers my question and that supports my hypothesis. So while my hypothesis is if you meditate before you ghost hunt, you might have a supernatural experience. And then my prediction is going to be after 15 to 17 minutes of guided tonal and shamanic drumming meditation, humans are going to be more likely, if not almost guaranteed, because nothing's guaranteed, to have some sort of supernatural experience or supposed supernatural experience in a haunted location. This is a lot, right? It's a lot. And I know what you're thinking. You're like, wait a minute, this is the scientific method. Where's experimenting? Well, it's not literally until the fifth one. And this has to stay down there. Experimenting has to really be low on the totem pole, because when I see experiments happening in haunted locations, and the experiment, like the phase before the experimentation was literally just like getting there and pulling out all your equipment and deciding you're going to do an experiment. That's really just like, that's observation. That's not even an experiment. It's observation. So the experiment is supporting or refuting, but preferably in the paranormal, you should do both. Your hypothesis. So, oh yeah. So, and there's a few ways that you can really support this in the paranormal, because, and you really should, is having different variables where you are either supporting your hypothesis or trying to disprove it. Maybe you have multiple groups at different locations running this same experiment and giving you the data and the results. Having two or more different experiments with different control variables, things like that. And then you have data analysis, which is, of course, like analyzing all the data from your experiments. And then you can finally formulate a conclusion. A conclusion doesn't mean you now have a fact. A conclusion may mean you have more questions. Hopefully, it means you have more questions, because then you get to start all over and you have another question, and like you didn't even have to do anything for it. It's just right there, and it's perfect, and it's fantastic, and it's great. So I went a little bit into using the chamber and kind of giving you the framework of the chamber and the scientific method, but I wrote it down so that I can better like tell it out to you. So when it comes to the chamber, if you don't know what the chamber is at the Madison Seminary, the chamber experiment is a 2-year-long, like social sort of participating experiment at the Madison Seminary in Madison, Ohio. And it's open to the public. And I also do like private experimentation with it, just so I have those control variables. But it essentially is trying to answer the question of meditation being something that helps people to experience supernatural phenomena. And when I was coming up with this, and this has kind of been like years in the making, and this experiment really only came about like by chance. And I didn't think I was ever going to be able to test this theory. So I'm super, super excited, specifically to Adam Kimball and Rebecca Kirschbaum, because they gave me the opportunity to do this. And it's really great to sort of see something come to fruition like that. So my question was, does meditation help both gifted and non-gifted people experience possible or seemingly supernatural occurrences? And that was kind of my question. And my observation stage was through, of course, like me being decently studied in meditation practices. I studied yogic practices and meditation in India. That's where I received my certifications. I have, whether it's experience spirituality in non-denominational Christian churches to Catholicism to being a part of Muslim groups, and just the spirituality piece and how our psyche sort of changes with either like prayer or meditation or anything like that. So the observation stage has been running for years and years and years. And paranormal specific, it was in haunted locations of just either going into an area and just being silent, being quiet, which is, a form of just focus meditation, and seeing if I am hearing more, if I'm hearing less, if I'm seeing things or anything like that. Or even just having a moment in my car to meditate before I go into a place, or having, I have had events where I did a group meditation. Specifically, we did one at Hillview Manor. I had a public ghost hunt, and we went into the One North hallway where people often have sort of visual phenomena and they hear things and things like that. And I had a group of people, and we all did a short meditation that included um, synchronizing breath and silence. And a good percentage of people in that group of maybe 10, I want to say at least 80% called out that they either were seeing something, that they were feeling something, or that they were hearing something in that sort of small observation. And now that sounds like, oh, that kind of sounds like an experiment. That was observation. That's another observation. That's testing out, a theory to see. And then that's observation data that I can bring to a hypothesis to formulate a controlled experiment out of. So then we know the hypothesis and we know the prediction, that meditative state. If you get somebody into a state of meditation and then you send them out into a haunted space, that they are going to experience something. So we're finally at the experimentation phase, and I'm taking 2 years to do the experiment. Because I think that really diverse data is super important, and diverse data includes data throughout different temperatures and different seasons, and different sort of like timelines of day and weekend and throughout the week and things like that. So I thought 2 years was a really good amount of time for that. And when it comes to the experimentation, we're drilling down even more. Man, this is getting serious. Here, I have this all here so you guys aren't so. My question was, does meditation help people experience possibly or seemingly supernatural phenomena? And then you have to have variables in your experimentation. So I want to talk about the different variables of the chamber experiment. So the independent variable would be the groups having access to the chamber and receiving the survey, because there's a QR code that you can take. You can answer questions about your experience. So the independent variable is what changes through the experimentation. So these are kind of like the trial and error. So what's going to be changing throughout the chamber experiment are the people doing it. So that's my independent variable. And then also another sort of independent variable is going to be every few months changing out the sound to just a little bit, just to gather a little bit more data. So the people, and then occasionally the program, the form of meditation, but it'll change so minutely that it probably won't even be noticed other than to me and the data set that I'm using. So then there's dependent variables. That's what we are observing. And what are we observing with this? The variation of experiences logged before and after using the chamber. So the directions on the chamber is walk around the 3rd floor and note if you experience anything. When you're done, do the chamber, 17 minutes long meditation, walk around that exact same floor again and see if anything changes. And yes, of course, a lot of this is based on sort of the idea that I'm trusting what these people are saying. And that's why it's running for 2 years. Because if I start to see a pattern in experiences, or a large percentage of people saying one sort of like weird obscure thing, that's interesting data, and I can't get that in like one night. And then there are the control variables. These are incredibly important. If you have been in any kind of presentation about paranormal technique with me, you've heard the term control variables. These are the things that cannot change. Oh, hey, Philip. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to see you in May. Hugs and kisses to you. And tell your family I said, give them hugs and kisses as well. The control variables is the location in the chamber program itself. So oh man, we're not even going to go into control variables because I feel like that is something for another day, because there are so many controls dependent on the experiment that you want to do that it's almost impossible sometimes to have control variables. So those things are kept the same. And that's the scientific method in play right now, that's happening right now in the paranormal. I'm gathering a data set, and analyzing that data isn't going to happen for like 3 years. I mean, other than real time analyzing it now. So it's something that takes, an incredibly long time. And I feel like the conclusion is just going to come up with more answers. And I think that's great. And I think that's awesome. My goal for that is to find maybe even some sort of like tonal program that I can put on Spotify and people can just have access to when they want to go into a haunted location and maybe just like tune in a little bit more, or maybe feel a little bit what, our medium friends are experiencing in a location. And I want to see more people sort of like trying out this methodology, because like I said, and it's not to be like elitist, because obviously I'm literally doing this like one thing, and it is jarring to say the least when it comes to really sitting down and applying the scientific method to the paranormal. But this is applying the scientific method to something that is, meditation has been studied for thousands of years. And so it's a really cool way to have some data that might be, backing up the importance of meditation, or backing up the sort of the process of meditation and how it can really help people to maybe even like become a little bit more of a believer in some of the paranormal things that we see. So, um, where am I with this? Oh my gosh, I got through the whole scientific method. This is so great. And all the variables. Whoa. Okay. I know that that was a lot. This is a lot. I knew this one was going to be a lot. I'm making such good time though. I really wanted to try to condense this down into an hour because it's so much information, and we could talk for so long about how to apply the scientific method to different theories and how to apply it to different techniques and different scenarios. And, I urge you to sort of write down these steps and challenge yourself and see if you can, put some information next to each one of these words and try to do it in a very impartial and non-biased way. So that means your experiment can't be, what the psychic tells me, and it can't be what my dowsing rods tell me, and it has to be impartial. It has to be observable, and it has to be repeatable. And you can apply this to psychic medium phenomena too. We can definitely work out like a scientific method with those questions like that. Definitely scientific method you can do with things like the Estes method. Not as a way to get the answers to your Estes method, but whether or not the Estes method works. We could totally do scientific method on whether or not the Estes method works, and different methods like that too. So, but just remember that these don't always have to be in order. Sometimes you have to observe for a very long time before you can even come up with an observable question. And sometimes your conclusion is really just going to be a catalyst for more questions. And actually, that should be really exciting, because the more questions that we have, the more we're able to find different and like complex answers. All right, I'm going to shut up for a second. Does anybody have any questions? Open it up for some questions. I know it's a lot. I might not even be able to answer your questions, to be honest. Like, especially if it's, how would you apply it to this? That's too long of a question. Otherwise, it is 5:49, and I'm so excited I was able to do this in an hour. That was my biggest goal, because I want this to be something that is digestible, and it's not super daunting to watch back if you want to watch back at all. And I kept to my agenda, which I'm really impressed by too. So as long as nobody has any questions, I think it would be really, really cool for people to share how they're using the scientific method. Share the questions that they are interested in asking by using the scientific method, sharing their observations, like normalizing this kind of data sharing. And before you know it, we're going to have some really kind of incredible things coming out that we can actually look at and be like, okay, this data is not based on whether or not I trust the person giving it to me. This is like hands to the paper data. So if your part of your scientific method answer involves anything that just says, oh, we felt, or it said this, and my dog's name is that, that's not scientific method. So if you're interested in doing more of this stuff, I feel like I lost a lot of people, but that's okay. Super fun and interesting. I'm doing it. I hope that you do it, and I hope that everybody does it. Look up the scientific method, really pay attention to independent, dependent, and control variables when it comes to your paranormal exploration. And you can even just use independent, dependent, and controlled variables if you're just like having some fun at a location. That you can totally do. You don't need scientific method for that. Have fun. Be safe. Do I have any other announcements? The next live is in 2 weeks, and we're going to really be diving into the tech behind the flashlight method. If you don't know what the flashlight method is, don't worry about it, because I'm going to tell you what it is. You could also look it up. You can also, we did the flashlight method. I have a video on YouTube at Hillview Manor where there is some flashlight method at the end there. Body temper. Oh, that's a really good one, Amber. That's a good one. Yeah, that's a really good one. That's great. Because that's kind of taking into a visceral reaction, and then maybe it would lead to more questions. That's really cool. I like that. I like that one. Yep. Do it. Do it. That gave me chills. That's a really good one. I love that. Don't get emotional, Lauren. That was good. Yeah. Otherwise though, I'm out of here. I'm doing some top secret shit here. So I gotta go get back to some of the top. Yes, girl. Yes, girl. I gotta go get back to my top secret stuff. And Amber is gonna be scientific methoding the shit out of some body temp responses, which I love that so much. Yeah, I'm super into it. Yeah, guys. Hey, this is I'm Lauren Hellickson, or Lauren Haunts, and I'm haunting your internet, and I'm gonna continue doing that because you can't get rid of me because I'm a demon. So I love you guys so much. Okay. Thank you for being here. I love you. Goodbye.